Hello, my name is David Kreller. I'm an advisor with the Small Business Development Center at Wichita State University. Today, I am joined with Mr. Shawn Wilson with Union State Bank. He's Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer. And the topic today is cybersecurity for small business. So October is kind of recognized as the National Cybersecurity Month around the nation. And so we're hoping to talk with Shawn a little bit today about some of the common threats that we see happening out there, as well as what businesses can do to protect them. So thank you, Shawn, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'll jump right in here it's a constantly, it seems like cybersecurity is a constantly changing thing. There's threats we hear about in the news on a daily basis. What are some of the more common threats that small businesses are observing today?
Well, the number one thing that you're going to see today is phishing and other variations of ishing. There's vishing and smishing. They kind of tweak that a little bit for voicemail or phone-based or text-based phishing, but it's all the same kind of idea where you're getting a surprise email or a surprise text message or voicemail that the bad actor is pretending to be someone you know or trust and trying to get you to take action. Click on a link, download a file, log into a website, that kind of thing. Generally, that leads to account takeovers or business email compromise. BEC is the common term there, which then generally leads to payment fraud. They're trying to get you to buy something or reveal payment information at some point. So we see those all the time. They still lead all of the reports every year. It's still a very lucrative business for them.
Very interesting. Uh, Kind of on that same note, so if a business would be attacked, what might be the typical impacts on their business? What might they see?
Sure. Well, and one thing I did want to touch on is that some people believe that maybe they're too small to be a target, or that nobody's going to attack me. They don't know who I am. I'm a small business, and in the Midwest somewhere. But one of the things to keep in mind is that the bad actors are generally throwing out very wide nets. They're scanning the entire internet constantly, or they're scanning new businesses that pop up, or any sort of advertising out there. So anybody can become a focus, not because the bad actor found you and wanted to attack you directly, but just by happenstance, they come upon you as a target. So they're targets of opportunity. And when they do get a hit, generally you can have sensitive data stolen. So your customer lists, your internal business databases, your payment information. You can suffer financial losses if the bad actor is able to convince you to submit a payment or submit a wire. Of course, there's productivity losses if you have an encryption situation where they take down all of your employee computers or servers. If you've got backroom setups like that, then they can take you down, in which case you can't conduct business. So especially if you're a business that generally makes money by the minute or by the hour on a production basis, that can hit you pretty hard, pretty quick. If it's not that kind of business, you can still suffer a reputation loss where the front page newspaper tomorrow is going to have the story of local business gets attacked or local business gets hacked, and sending out all those letters telling people that their customer information may have been compromised. All that can just lead to a bad reputation for you.
And that reputation risk that could be almost as worse in some cases as the actual financial loss. So
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And customer trust may be impossible to earn back in some cases. Some customers see that and run. Kind of a plus and minus, I guess, is that over the years, breaches, security incidents have become so common that it seems to hit customers a little bit less these days. But depending on the type of business that you do and how close your customers, really are and what kind of information you deal with, you never know. One small hiccup could be, the difference in your quarter, right? So.
that is actually a great lead into my next question as small businesses, Main Street businesses, how would somebody tell, how would somebody know that they've been a victim of an attack?
Well, the first obvious one could be scary messages on your screen. If somebody clicks a bad link, then some of those lead to an immediate pop up, an immediate takeover that tells you, hey, all your files have been encrypted or we've stolen everything. Call us or give us money, sort of thing. That scary message can be one indicator. But sometimes you can't really tell until local law enforcement or FBI calls you to then report that they're seeing some information with your name attached to it. Like, I believe that's what's happened with the Target breach, actually, is they were contacted by national security individuals to say, hey, we've seen a lot of credit card information out there on the dark web circulating among the bad actors, and they all seem to be pointing towards something related to your business. And so then the investigation launches after that. So sometimes that happens. Other times you might see elements of your technology functioning slowly or poorly, whether that's frequent crashes or slowing down, your normal processes that you produce invoices takes twice as long as it normally does. Those could just be normal technical glitches, or they could be a sign that someone is in there doing things that are slowing those systems down. So various things. There's not always a solid indicator to look at. It varies based on the attack.
That would have to be a terrifying phone call to get from a law enforcement agency saying we think you've been subject to an attack.
Oh, absolutely.
So we kind of talked about small businesses, but you see it in the news, you read about it in the Wall Street Journal. Large businesses are spending absolutely astronomical amounts of money in some cases to prevent data theft, enhance their cybersecurity. For small businesses, sometimes those dollar amounts may be out of reach. What are some basic and fundamental things that small businesses can do to help mitigate a risk or defend themselves from a cyber attack?
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes you read the stories about a breach happening at a very large company like the Target breach or Equifax, those kind of things, and say if they can't prevent it, then how is there any chance I can prevent it? And there are no silver bullets about do these things and you can't get attacked. There are plenty in the security industry who say it's just a matter of time, everyone will. I'm not a big fan of that particular mindset, only because it's kind of defeatist, that this is a solvable problem, not to perfection. You can never say never, but there are a lot of things that you can do to really bring yourself away from the front lines. I want to touch on a little bit. So Equifax is the big one that we all have heard about, of course, in recent years. In their situation, they had a whole lot of fundamental misses. I'm probably one of 10 people in the country that really enjoyed reading a congressional report, in this case, because we got to do a deep dive on what really happened. They didn't have very good inventory of their internal systems. They had several acquisitions over the years that led to some really messy documentation. And because of that, that led to poor patch management. They had missing updates, missing patches on a lot of their internal systems. They had large gaps as far as that goes. They poorly maintained security tools as well. In addition, then poor network segmentation, where they hadn't taken the time to really separate out the sensitive parts of the network in different tasks. Creating VLANs is a way that you do that, but so there are some other segmentation techniques. They haven't done those, along with a lot of little things. HB Gary is another example of, I don't know, not all everyone may have heard about them, but if you look them up, you'll find they are a security consulting firm, essentially, very large government contracts, very large Fortune 100, Fortune 500 customers. They also then suffered a massive breach. And in their case, the bad actor gave an interview with Wired magazine, I believe it was, that detailed everything that happened. We rarely get that kind of an insight. So it was good for the security community to see that. In their case, their admins had been reusing passwords on public and private systems. They didn't have multi-factor authentication or use any sort of IP restrictions, what we might call conditional access or ACLs. They didn't use any network segmentation, or not very much internally either. There was also some social engineering aspects and password reset procedures that were pretty weak. So all of those things, when you look at the real world attacks that happened, what really went wrong, a lot of the things that went wrong are things that any small business can get right for no dollars or very low, small dollars. First and foremost, don't reuse passwords. If you have a system that allows you to log in and use it every day, but then there are also administrative functions, deleting things entirely, shutting things off, that sort of stuff. Most of the time, you can have an admin user and a regular privileged, non-privileged user. Those two accounts should have different passwords. Most systems today allow for multi-factor authentication, MFA, in some form or another. MFA is not a golden ticket or a silver bullet, but it is a big step forward to keeping your account secure. So making sure MFA is enabled anywhere you can enable it is a good thing. Social engineering and password practices. Social engineering, generally, the way you do that is with phishing training. You can create what we call the human firewall, where you're training your employees to be suspicious of things. The number one thing as a takeaway for social engineering is that if it's not expected, you should take a pause, take a break, take a breath, read it closer. Is this really supposed to happen right now? Most of those attacks start with an email that says, hey, do this thing right now. But that's not an email you were expecting. You didn't initiate this conversation. You weren't expecting payroll to be processed on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. Something is generally out of step with those. So if you didn't expect it, take a pause, think about that. Try other methods to confirm those kinds of things. Don't email that person back. Call that business and say, hey, did you send me this email? Nobody will mind you double checking on something like that, especially when it comes to money involved. So yeah, there's some basic things that can really separate you pretty far away from the front lines. Every year, all of the breach reports that I read through every year constantly point out lack of patches, so lack of updates, keeping your Windows updates up to date, and third-party software, and then phishing. People clicking on a link and giving away passwords and giving away their credentials to systems are very common on the list.
So use good common sense, training, and keep your software up to date.
Right. Yep.
Pretty
And if you don't
straightforward.
have one of the other things to keep in mind when it comes to your credentials with passwords, we all have thousands, dozens to hundreds to, as IT professionals, thousands of passwords in different systems. Using a password manager is a big takeaway. If you're not currently using a password manager, definitely look into that. There are dozens of good options out there. I personally use one called LastPass. There is an option called 1Password. There's one called KeyPass. There's a lot of them out there, and most of them are very good. The idea is that you, the human, are no longer creating your passwords or having to maintain them. That way you can generate a random unique password for every system that you connect to. And a lot of systems today are using more modern authentication. They're doing one-time logins, or they're using things like passkeys. Definitely those are good things to do. All of those things contribute to a much more secure login experience.
And I'll close on that thought of one of the things that for a lot of businesses, they believe that having proper cybersecurity insurance is out of their reach. And in the last 5-10 years, that's changed a lot. So I would add on to that as well, Shawn, is talk to your insurance agent, see what additional coverages you might have to protect you. And it's not going to help you so much on the front end, but it can help you on the back end. And I've seen some of the insurance companies offer great additional resources to small business to help do self-audits, self-assessments, try to find better ways to protect their information. So, Shawn,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your insight and your information. Clearly very knowledgeable. Again, my name is David Kreller. I'm with the Small Business Development Center at Wichita State University. Today, I'm joined with Shawn Wilson, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Union State Bank. If you have other questions upon seeing this video, and you do need to reach the SBDC, you can reach us at area code 316 978 3193. Again, thank you again, Shawn, and everybody, please be safe out there.